Hello, and welcome to this recording on data visualization. My name is Megan Gaida, and I am a monitoring and evaluation specialist with the Leadership Management and Governance Project. This recording is based on a webinar that took place on February 26th, 2015, to share data visualization tips and tricks with staff across MSH. What is data visualization? It can be simple like this word cloud or a bar chart, or it can be complex, like this circular ideogram. It can display quantitative data like this histogram, or qualitative data like these infographics. Many of us are familiar with an early example of data visualization by Florence Nightingale. She developed a polar area or rose diagram to graphically present statistical data, showing that more soldiers were dying during the Crimean War due to poor sanitation and nutrition than from the injuries they incurred in battle. To get a better idea of what good data visualization should look like, we'll review a few examples of graphics using a fictional data set. Let's say we're hosting a training workshop and we need to determine the attendees' lunch preferences. In this first graphic, we've visualized the results of our lunch poll. What are your key takeaways from this graphic? What does it show? You may see that our group of attendees prefer a variety of lunch options, but it's difficult to tell which is the most popular or how many we should order of each. There are a few considerations we should keep in mind when visualizing our data. First, humans are not good at judging area, so this pie chart is not a very good choice to represent the multiple lunch choices that are available. Second, having a three-dimensional data display like this slows down interpretation and can lead to inaccurate comprehension. Third, the default color scheme is irrelevant to the data. It just creates confusion without adding any value. And lastly, it is left up to the viewer to interpret the data and decide what is important, assuming the viewer takes the time to do so, and that is a big assumption that we often cannot afford to make. Using the same data set, we've created a second graphic. What are your key takeaways from this graphic? What does it show? And how is it better or worse than the previous graphic? You may note now that chicken is the most popular lunch choice, and we can also determine the percentage of attendees that prefer each option. What are some other improvements? Because humans are better at assessing length compared to area, the bar chart is a better choice for visualizing this data than the pie graph in the previous example. Also, ordering the chart from greatest to least aids comprehension. However, the default color scheme is still irrelevant to the data and can create confusion. And it is still left up to the viewer to interpret the data and decide what is important, assuming our viewer takes the time to do so. Again, using the same data set, we've created a third iteration of the graphic. What are your key takeaways from this graphic? What does it show? And how is it better or worse than the previous graphic? You'll note here that the key message is stated in a descriptive title and explanatory subtitle. So the presenter has taken a stance on the analysis, and the takeaway is very clear. Also, the point that illustrates the main message is highlighted in a bold emphasis color to pop out, which is that 1 in 10 attendees will not take lunch during the training. Also, all of the data is still available and visualized in the graphic in case our viewer wants more information. So, why do data visualization? Why care about how we visualize our data? Data visualization engages viewers, our audience. It improves the audience's understanding of the information presented. It increases the audience's likelihood of recalling the information presented. It respects the time and energy of the audience by relaying data and information directly. And lastly, it promotes the perceived quality, credibility, and trustworthiness of us and our work. What visual should you use for your data? How to select the best visual for your data is often the most difficult part. Use the chart chooser to get an idea of several different graphics that could work for what you want to visualize. Are you showing a part-to-whole relationship? Consider using a column chart or icon array. How about change over time? Try using a stacked bar chart or line graph. If you're visualizing a comparison, try a small multiples chart, back-to-back bar chart, or dot plot. Keep in mind that there may be more than one good choice. Try out several different designs. Sketching, drawing by hand on pen and paper, can be a good way to start. What criteria should you consider in selecting your graphic? You'll want to consider the available data, what results you want to highlight or your key message, and the audience. For example, returning to our earlier visualization, we could have highlighted that chicken is the most popular lunch option, or that 8% of attendees do not eat meat. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, live examples of how to design your visuals in Microsoft Excel. Although these graphics are not difficult to create once you know how, they do take a little bit of time, especially when you're first learning. So remember to be patient and set aside enough time to visualize your data if you want to share it out in reports or other communications materials. The first example that we'll cover today is a stacked bar or column chart, followed by the back-to-back bar chart, and thirdly, we'll review a dot plot. To create a stacked bar chart, or any chart in Excel 2010, begin by entering your data into Excel. Here we're using a fictional data set on the number of health workers trained at 5 different sites, A, B, C, D, and E, from 2010 through 2015. But you'll notice here that I ordered the years in reverse chronological order because I know that that's how I'd like my bar chart to generate itself. So to begin, we want to highlight the data that we'd like to visualize. Next, I'll go up on the ribbon to the Insert tab and select the 2D bar chart. For a stacked bar, it should be the second option. And Excel will generate something that looks like this graphic at left. Just so we can do a side-by-side comparison, I'm going to go ahead and select the same data set, go to the Insert tab, select a 2D stacked bar chart, again the second option, and this is the graphic that we'll edit, following good data visualization principles so we can see a difference in the before chart and the after chart. So to begin, we don't want these meaningless default colors, so we will choose our own. You can brand your graphic by using the colors of your organization or project logo. I want the colors to be in the same family, but distinct enough that we can make out the different groups. A good test of this is to print your graphic in black and white and make sure it's still readable. Excel does provide several different automatically generated design options, but you can see that they're still a little bit difficult to read. So I may want to change the colors myself. To change the colors, I can double-click on one bar, or click on it and then right-click and go to Format Data Series, which opens this dialog box. I'll go on the left-hand side to Fill. I'll select Solid Fill and choose from any color I'd like. I'll choose a very dark blue. And you can do this for each site's data individually. Now let's simplify the axes. It looks like the x-axis is much longer than we need it to be, going all the way up to 2000, although our data really only goes slightly past 1500. So to edit this axis, I can double-click on the axis, or click on it once and then right-click, and go here to Format Axis, which opens this dialog box. For the maximum unit up here, let's go ahead and change it to 1600. The minimum we want to fix at 0. And let's also change the major unit and fix that at 200. So that will be the interval of our x-axis. While we have this dialog box open, we should also change the major tick mark type to none. And lastly, we want to go on the left-hand side to line color and select no line. This is just an extra line that Excel puts above the axis labels that is unnecessary. So let's close the dialog box. And now we can see that our x-axis on this second graphic is much simpler than the x-axis on the graphic at left. Let's do the same thing for the y-axis. We can double-click on the y-axis or right-click to open the Format Axis dialog box. Let's remove the tick marks and go to Line Color and select No Line. So now our y-axis is more simple as well. Now I'm looking again at this graphic and I feel that the grid lines are a little bit too dark and they create some confusion with all of the segments in our stacked bar. So I want to make these a lighter color. So I can double click on the grid lines or right click and open the Format Grid Lines dialog box. Under Line Color, I'll click Solid Line, and I can change the line color to something more subtle, let's say this very light gray, and close that. That definitely is an improvement, but again, looking at the graphic, I feel that these grid lines aren't necessary, so I may decide to remove them completely, in which case I'll just click on the grid lines again and press the delete key. There we go. So now we can see that our graphic at right is already much more clear than the graphic at left, but there are a few more things that we can improve. Let's move the legend to the top so that it doesn't crowd our chart area. So I'll go up on the ribbon to the Layout tab. I'll click the Legend button, and I'll select Show Legend at Top. A nice thing about this layout is that the legend is now displayed in the same order as our data bars on each stacked bar, making this graphic even easier to understand. You can see it starts with Site A on the left and goes all the way to Site E on the right. So the final thing that we'll need to do is create a chart title with our key takeaway. The strength of using this visual for our fictional data set is that it not only shows the number of health workers trained at each site each year, but also shows the total number trained by the project at all 5 sites each year, since the bars are stacked. So we want our title to make this key message clear. Again, on the Layout tab on the ribbon, I'll select the Chart Title button here towards the left and select Above Chart. You'll see it enters a text box where I can highlight the text chart title and type in my own. Let's make the title Project Trained More Health Workers Every Year from 2010 to 2015. Now I can go to the Home tab on the ribbon, and I can change the font size and color as well. So you'll see in these two graphics that the graphic on the right adheres to data visualization principles by making the key message a very clear takeaway in a chart title and really simplifying the graphic so that it's easy to understand and read. To create a back-to-back bar chart in Excel, begin by entering your data. Here again, we're using a fictional data set on the number of health workers trained at 5 different sites, A, B, C, D, and E, from 2010 through 2015. However, we want to create this back-to-back bar chart graphic so we can compare the data from only 2 sites, Site A and Site B. So I've copied and pasted those numbers separately. Highlight the data you'd like to visualize. We'll start with Site A. Go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, go to the bar chart, and select a 2D clustered bar. it should be the first option on the left. And Excel will generate a graphic that looks something like this. Now, we don't want these meaningless default colors, so we will choose our own. We can brand the infographic by using the colors of our organization or project logo. So with this example, let's use MSH colors. I'll make things easy for the first one by going to the Design tab and selecting one of Excel's chart styles, which is this orange color on the first line, and that's perfect for us here. This is a good time to remember to steer clear of any unnecessary formatting that makes your graphic look too busy and as such harder to comprehend. You'll see that many of Excel's chart styles have shading, background colors, or are in 3D, but we want to keep it simple. So just because they're available there doesn't mean that they're good options to use for your chart. All right, now let's insert a bar chart for Site B. So again, we want to highlight our data that we'd like to visualize. We'll go up to the Insert tab, Bar Charts, and again we'll select the 2D clustered bar, like so. So now we have the Site B graphic on the right and the Site A graphic on the left. So now in this case, I do want to change the color to one that is not this blue that Excel automatically generated. To do that, I can double click on a bar or click on it once and then right click and select Format Data Series, which opens this dialog box. I'll go up here on the left to Fill, select Solid Fill, and then I can choose any color that I like, and here I'll choose this olive green so that these look like MSH colors. And I'll close the dialog box. Now I can see from looking at the graphics that the legends are unnecessary. They're just a little bit redundant here because we have the different sites labeled above in the title. So I'm going to click on each legend and press the delete key to remove the legends from the graphics. Okay. Now I'm noticing that the x-axes are set to different scales. You can see the x-axis for Site A goes all the way up to 600, but for Site B, it only goes up to 350, and Site B's x-axis is set at intervals of 50, while Site A's axis is at intervals of 100. If we left this as is, the length of the bars in relation to one another would mislead our audience, and we don't want to do that. So from looking at these graphics side by side, it looks like both x-axes could be set to 500 with intervals at 100. So let's edit the axes. I'll start with Site A first. I can click on the axis once and right click or double click on it, and I'll go to Format Axis, opening this dialog box. We want to fix the minimum at 0, and the maximum we'll fix at 500, and the major units, again the intervals, will fix at 100. While we're here, let's go ahead and change the major tick mark type to none, so there are no tick marks. And then again, we'll go over here on the left to the line color and choose no line, just so we're removing any unnecessary lines from our graphic. And we'll close this dialog box. So now you can see that it's much more simple on the Site A graphic. And let's make the Site B x-axis the same. So again, we'll open the Format Axis dialog box, set the minimum at 0, we'll make the maximum 500, and the major unit, again, we want to set at 100. While we're here again, we'll change the major tick mark type to none to remove those little tick marks by the axis. And we'll go up here on the left to line color and select no line. And then we can close this dialog box. All right, so these are already getting much easier to read, and we can see some differences emerging in the length of the data bars between Site A and Site B. But let's also go ahead and simplify the y-axes. So again, I'll go to Format Axis on Site A's Y-axis, and we just want to remove the major tick marks, go to Line Color, and select No Line, and close that. I'll do the same for Site B. Remove the major tick marks. I'll change that to none. I'll go to Line Color on the left and select No Line. So now our axes X and Y on both graphics are much more simple. So as with the last graphic, I'm noticing that the grid lines don't appear to add much value and are making the graphics appear a little bit too busy. So I could change the line color of the grid lines, or I could go ahead and remove them entirely. So I'm going to click on the grid lines and press Delete. I'll do the same for Site B. I'll click on the grid lines and press the Delete key. Now we're ready to flip the bars on the Site A graphic so the charts can be back to back. I'm going to double click again on the X-axis on the Site A graphic, or click on it once and then right click to open the Format Axis dialog box. And you'll see here under the units where we were before, there's this checkbox that says Values in Reverse Order, and I want to check that box and close this dialog box. And now you'll see that it has flipped our bars for Site A. So now we can make sure that these graphics are lined up with one another, and we can actually delete the Y-axis on Site B so that these are aligned, and we can see that the years on the Y-axis are reflective of both graphics. Now, the last thing we want to do for our back-to-back bar chart so that this is a seamless visual is we want to remove the dark line that's around each of these graphics so that they look like one graphic instead of two separate ones that are pulled together. So to begin, I'll select the Site A graphic. I'll go to the Format tab up here on the ribbon, and I'll go to Shape Outline, and I'm going to select No Outline. I'll do the same for the Site B graphic. I'll click on the graphic. I'm on the Format tab, and I'll select Shape Outline, No Outline. So now you can see that this is one seamless graphic, the back-to-back bar, showing the difference between Site A and Site B's number of health workers trained over the years 2010 through 2015. To create a dot plot in Excel, begin by entering your data. Here again, we're using the fictional data set of number of health workers trained at 5 different sites, A, B, C, D, and E, for the years 2010 through 2015. However, we want to create the dot plot so we can compare the data for each site for only 2 years, the first year of the project, 2010, and the last year of the project, 2015. So I've copied and pasted those numbers separately. Notice that I've also added a column labeled dot spacing. We'll need this column so that the lines for each site's data points, the dots, will be spaced evenly apart. In increments of 0.5, I started with Site E, which I'll want at the bottom of my graphic, and worked my way up to Site A, which I'll want at the top, ending at 2.5. So highlight the data you'd like to visualize. We'll start with the 2010 data. Now I'm going to hold down the Control key and highlight the dot spacing data as well. Now I'll go up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and I'm going to select a scatter plot. It should be the first option here on the left. And Excel will generate something that looks like this. It doesn't look right at this point, but we'll get there. So first, we've clicked on the graph. We're on the Design tab, as you can see here on the top of the ribbon, and I'm going to click on this Select Data button. It opens this dialog box. Now I want to change the series name so that it's on the cell that says 2010. So I'm going to select this line that says dot spacing under Legend Entries Series here, and I'm going to click this button right here to edit that series. So you can see it opens this new dialog box that's called Edit Series, and the first row here that's highlighted is the series name. I'm going to click on the cell that says 2010 instead of the dot spacing cell that's currently highlighted. And now I'll go back over to this dialog box and press OK. So now I can see, if I move this dialog box out of the way, that our series is properly labeled as the 2010 data points. But I'm going to keep this dialog box open because there's more that we'll do in here. Now we want to add the 2015 data as well to our dot plot. So in the Select Data Source dialog box, here where we are, again under Legend Entries Series, I'm going to click this button right here to add. It's opened again this same Edit Series dialog box. So in this first row for series name, I'm going to click on the cell that says 2015. In the second row, Series X values, I'm going to highlight the cells that have the 2015 data. And then lastly, in this third row of Series Y values, instead of what it already has listed there, I'm going to select all of the dot spacing intervals that are in the last column. And now I'm going to press OK. And I'll press OK again to close the Select Data Source dialog box as well. So while we're here, let's delete the legend. We'll clarify what these different markers represent later when we create our chart title, but we know that the blue diamonds for now are the 2010 data, and the red boxes are the 2015 data. So I'm going to click on the legend and press the delete key. So now our dot plot is looking like this. Next, we want to format our data points. So I can double-click on a set of data points, or click on them once and then right-click and select Format Data Series, which opens this dialog box. I'm going to go up here on the left to Marker Options, and I'll select Built-in. Under the Type drop-down menu, I'm going to choose a circle, and we want to make this much larger. Let's make it size 20. Now under Marker Fill, the next line, I'll select that. I'm going to choose Solid Fill and change the fill color. So I'll make the 2010 markers gray. And now I'll close this dialog box. Now I'm going to follow the same steps with the 2015 markers to edit those. So again, I can double click on them or click once and then right click and open the Format Data Series dialog box. Again, I'll go up to Marker Options. I'll choose Built-in. Under Type, I'll use the drop-down menu to select a circle. And then I want to make it much larger, like size 20. And then the Marker Fill, I'll select Solid Fill. And let's keep it as a dark red color. The last year of the project will be red as our emphasis color. And I'll close this dialog box. So now we can see it's starting to look a lot more like a recognizable dot plot, but we have a few more edits to make. So now we want to add some data labels on our markers. So again, I can double click or right click on this set of data points and choose here where it says Add Data Labels. So you can see that Excel has automatically put the data labels to the right of our data points, and it has given us the y-axis dot spacing values, which are really irrelevant data points. They're just helping us format this graphic. So I want to edit those. So I'll right click on these data points again, and now I'm going to go down to Format Data Labels. So I can see here at the top, Label Contains. I want to uncheck Y value and check X value. I want the labels to display our X values. And then down here below under label position, I want to click center so that the label is centered on the marker. And finally, I'm going to go up here to the left on fill, and I'm going to select no fill, because the data labels right now are like a dialog box, and if it's filled, it may change the shape of our marker. And so I'll close this dialog box. Now we can see our data labels on the markers, but I can make them even more clear by going up to the Home tab on the ribbon and editing the font. So maybe I'll increase the size to 12 point to make them a little bit larger, and I'll change the color to white so that they're a little bit easier to read. There we are. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the 2015 markers. Again, right click, add data labels, and now I'll right click again and go to format data labels. Again, I want these labels to contain the X value, not the Y value. I want them to be centered on the marker. And then under fill, I'm going to select no fill, and I'll close this dialog box. Now I'll make the font the same. I'll change it to 12 point, and I'll change the font color to white. There we are. So now that's much easier to read, and we have our data labels directly over the markers. Now it looks like there's an extra line at the top here at 3 because Excel has automatically set the y-axis maximum to 3, but we don't need that. We just need these lines that are holding our markers. So I'm going to edit the y-axis so that the maximum value that we have is less than 3. So let me double click on this, or click on it once and then right click and go to the Format Axis dialog box. The minimum unit we'll keep at 0. The maximum unit, I actually want to make it 2.9. This will leave a little bit of space above the graphic, but then won't generate the line for 3 that would be otherwise a blank line. And I'm going to fix the major unit at 0.5. All right, I can change the tick marks to none. I can change the line color again to no line, as we've done in our previous graphics, and close this dialog box. So now you can see that the y-axis is formatted as we'd like it, but we actually don't need these y-axis labels because, again, they're irrelevant to our data. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that axis entirely now that we've formatted it properly just by pressing the delete key. We can also adjust our x-axis. It looks like the highest data point that we have here is 494, so we could set our x-axis at 500 for the maximum. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the x-axis, right-click and open the Format Axis dialog box. I'm going to keep the minimum unit fixed at 0, and the maximum unit I'll change and have that fixed at 500. Again, the major unit we'll leave at 100. I'm going to go to major tick mark type and select none. And again, go over here to line color and select no line. And then I'll close this dialog box. So this is looking much cleaner, and we can see the dot plot is starting to emerge. So we're almost finished. Now we want to add our chart title. So I've clicked on the chart. I'm going to go up here on the ribbon to the Layout tab. I'll go over here to Chart Title, click on that button, and I'm going to select Above Chart. So again, Excel puts this text box in there. I'll highlight the words Chart Title and enter my own title. Let's go ahead and make the title Number of Health Workers Trained Increased at Sites from 2010 to 2015. Except at Site D, we can see that there are external factors that were perhaps going on, because the number there on the fourth line from the top actually went down by 2015. So let's add that caveat as an explanatory subtitle. Site D, which experienced political unrest, perhaps, is the exception. Okay. So now this chart title has gotten to be pretty massive. We can go ahead and select the chart title and edit the font a little bit. I'll go ahead and highlight the main title, make that a little bit smaller, let's say size 16. And the subtitle, I'll highlight that and make that much smaller, let's say size 12. And now this is where we can actually go back and insert some labels so that the colors of our markers are clear. We have the years 2010 and 2015 in our chart title, and by highlighting those years and making them correspond to the colors of our dots, we've gone ahead and removed the need to have a legend, but it's still clear exactly what the different colored markers represent. And so the last thing that we'll need to do that we're still missing here is what these lines correspond to. So we know from our data over here on the left that Site A is at the top and Site E is at the bottom, but we do need to add some labels for our reader so that that's clear. The easiest way to do this is actually in Excel. We can go ahead and go to the Insert tab and insert some text boxes directly over our graphic. So I'll draw the text box where I'd like this information to be, and I'll start with Site A. All right, now I can copy this text box, paste it, and go to Site B. Again, I'll copy and paste the text box. This will be Site C. The next one is Site D. And the last one is Site E. So now they're a little bit hard to read because you can see that they have lines around the text boxes and they're not aligned very well. So I'm going to hold down the Control button and click on each of these text boxes. I'm going to go up here to the Format tab under Drawing Tools that's highlighted here. I'm going to click on Shape Outline and select No Outline. And then I'm going to go over here to the right and select Align and Align Left. So now with a little bit of sizing adjustments, we have a clear graphic with all of our site data, our dots that correspond to different years as labeled in the title, and we have the title and explanatory subtitle that give our key takeaways. Stay tuned for additional data visualization webinars in the spring and summer of 2015 from other MSHers. We'll have a webinar on dashboards as well as one on infographics, and these will be recorded and shared out for those who are not able to attend the live sessions. If you're interested in learning more about data visualization, this list shows some great data visualization experts who you can follow on Twitter or by reading their blogs online. Thank you for your interest in data visualization, and I hope to see you at future DataViz webinars. I'll leave you with a brilliant graphic that really captures what DataViz is all about. Till next time, thanks again.